Halloween. It is unlike any other night around here. And this one is like any other Halloween for Donald Trump before in his life, because on this Halloween, Donald Trump is running scared. Donald Trump has plenty to be scared about, and so he is running scared, with a hugely successful prosecutor investigating him. Robert Mueller's batting average as a special prosecutor is 1,000. Every single person Robert Mueller has charged with crimes has pleaded guilty or been found guilty, or in the case of Paul Manafort, both found guilty and pleaded guilty. The only defendants Robert Mueller has charged who are not now under his control are in Russia, the Russian military officers who Vladimir Putin ordered to attack our democracy by attacking our 2016 presidential election in what Robert Mueller says was a conspiracy against the United States of America to benefit the presidential candidacy of Donald Trump. That is plenty to be worried about right now for Donald Trump. With Donald Trump already an unindicted co-conspirator in a federal case in Manhattan that Robert Mueller started and then sent up to the federal prosecutors in Manhattan, who got guilty pleas from Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, who knows an awful lot about Donald Trump, and he's telling all of it to federal prosecutors. So Donald Trump has a lot to be scared of. Donald Trump should also be scared about New York State prosecutors who are investigating him and his family as possible partners in crime. But Donald Trump has something else to be scared of this week, something even more immediate than a special prosecutor bearing down on him every day. Donald Trump is obviously scared of who is going to be in charge of the impeachment process in the House of Representatives after next Tuesday's election. And at this time, on Wednesday night, next week, we will know. And Donald Trump will know. And are the Democrats going to be in control of the impeachment process if Robert Mueller delivers a report to Congress showing that President Trump has committed impeachable crimes? We will know the answer to that at this time next week. If the Democrats win the House of Representatives on Tuesday night, Donald Trump is going to be more terrified than he has ever been in his life, and Robert Mueller is going to be instantly more empowered, knowing that a Democratic House of Representatives will not ignore his report the way a Republican House of Representatives would try to and probably succeed in ignoring it. And today we learned more about the roadmap of Robert Mueller's investigation that we will discuss later in this hour, including the possibility that the President of the United States is already under subpoena by the special prosecutor and is secretly fighting that subpoena in court. We will get to that later. There is something else at stake in next week's election for Donald Trump and the country, and this one's huge. It's the thing that is always at stake in our elections, but Donald Trump doesn't care about this one nearly as much as he cares about what the election means for the investigations of Donald Trump and his family. That other thing that is at stake is nothing less than the governing of the United States of America. If the Democrats win the House of Representatives, Donald Trump will no longer be in control of the federal government. Donald Trump will no longer be able to pass a single piece of legislation through the House of Representatives, not one. And that means no legislation in the United States Senate, even if it is controlled by the Republicans, will ever become law, because it won't be able to get through the House of Representatives. All Trump dreams of passing any legislation die on Tuesday night if the Democrats win the House of Representatives. If the Republicans manage to hold on to control of the Senate, they will still be able to squeak through Trump confirmations, but they won't be so eager to do that because they will have seen how Donald Trump lost the House of Representatives for Republicans, and the surviving Republicans in the Senate will know that they're next in the 2020 elections because many more vulnerable Republicans will be up for re-election in the Senate then. And so if the Democrats win the House of Representatives, which is something that probably won't be decided until the final votes are counted in the California congressional districts late Tuesday night, then everything changes. Everything changes in the life of Donald Trump And Donald Trump is scared of every one of those changes. And that's why Donald Trump is running scared this week. Donald Trump is running scared as a campaigner, desperately trying to reelect a Republican House of Representatives and a Republican Senate, because he knows his own political future depends on it. Not just his political future, his future as an unindicted co-conspirator, his future as possibly the next impeached president of the United States. Everything is riding on Tuesday's vote for Donald Trump, and that is why he is running scared, and running scared means trying to make his voters scared. Donald Trump was supposed to be out there now urging his voters to not get tired of winning. They were going to get so tired of winning all of Donald Trump's big wins. Donald Trump promised his voters that they were going to get tired of winning because they were going to win the fight to reduce and eliminate our national debt. The $19 trillion national debt that Donald Trump talked about in every appearance as a candidate for president is now over $21 trillion because Donald Trump has not decreased the national debt, not one penny. Instead, Donald Trump has created, through his tax cuts for the super rich, the single biggest one-year increase in the national debt in history. And Donald Trump was the self-proclaimed king of debt in his businesses. He warned us. He loved not paying those debts, and now he is the king of debt in government, and he's not going to pay those debts either. Taxpayers are eventually going to pay those debts, and that doesn't feel like winning for Trump voters. And so Donald Trump can't talk about the national debt now, not one word about it. And Donald Trump does not campaign as the triumphant winner of a giant tax cut for the super rich because most of Donald Trump's supporters didn't get in on that tax cut. They can't feel it. And for many of them, it was actually a huge tax increase. In many cases, the biggest tax increase of their lives. If you're a middle-class homeowner in New Jersey, in New York, in California, and many other states where your financial planning has always depended on the deductibility of state income taxes and property taxes, you can no longer do that. You don't have those deductions anymore. Donald Trump took that away. And the loss of those deductions means an increase in your annual tax bill of tens of thousands of dollars. And if you're one of America's regular rich people, like, you know, a millionaire, a person who makes $1 million or a couple of $1 million a year, you got a huge tax increase of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year because of what Donald Trump did to the deductibility of state income taxes and property taxes. That's why I never called a Trump tax cut a tax cut for the rich. It was a tax increase for the rich and a tax cut only for the super rich. And the super rich do not show up for Trump rallies. They just whisper what they want directly to Donald Trump on the phone late at night, that unsecured iPhone that Donald Trump likes to use to talk to his super rich friends while the Chinese and the Russians and any foreign intelligence agency that wants to can listen in. The Trump victims who are sitting there at the Trump rallies in their red hats, having gotten nothing from the Trump government, do not feel like they are winning, and Donald Trump knows that. And so because he can't make them feel like they are winning, he needs to make them feel scared. That's the play Donald Trump knows how to run. Make them feel scared. The Mexicans are coming and they're rapists. That was his very first message to the very first voters who listened to him on his very first day as a presidential candidate. And now they're coming again. They're coming in what Donald Trump calls an invasion of our southern border. Never mind that the people walking toward our southern border have no military equipment for this invasion. Never mind that some of them are barefoot. Some of them can't walk because they're babies and they haven't learned to walk yet. Some are toddlers. Some are grandparents. Some are nursing mothers. Donald Trump convinced a mass murderer in Pennsylvania that all of those people are dangerous invaders, all of them, the babies, the toddlers, the mothers, the grandmothers. Donald Trump convinced a mass murderer in Pennsylvania that they had to be stopped. And the mass murderer's idea about how to stop it was to go into a synagogue and kill Jews. As he was firing his assault weapon, he screamed, "All Jews must die." He didn't get all Jews, but he got all he could, 11. And while he was at it, he wounded 4 police officers. And the mass murderer did all of that, because Donald Trump told him there was an invasion coming and it had to be stopped. That's what the mass murderer said on social media before going into the synagogue. Donald Trump got that Pennsylvania voter scared, really scared. Voting wasn't good enough for him anymore. He was so scared he had to kill. He didn't go into the synagogue because he was tired of winning. He went into the synagogue because of what Donald Trump called an invasion. An invasion. Donald Trump decided he needed to come up with something other than the word invasion after the mass murder of Jews in Pittsburgh, and so he turned to the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship and pretended that it is not written irrevocably into the United States Constitution. And some of the news media actually fell for that and helped him deliver that lie directly to his voters, that Donald Trump, with the stroke of a pen, can get rid of a provision of the United States Constitution. It is an out-and-out lie told by a man who is running scared about what happens to him when the votes are counted on Tuesday night, especially those final votes in California that will determine who will control the House of Representatives. And now Donald Trump is adding another lie to his big invasion lie because Donald Trump's voters don't feel like they're winning. And the new lie is that he's going to send 5,000 troops to the southern border to stop the invasion. But the Trump voters don't know that federal law prevents the U.S. military from enforcing domestic law on U.S. soil. And yes, they're going to stand on U.S. soil if they go down there, where they will not be able to do anything. Military can't do any law enforcement inside the United States. That's why we have and pay for 17,000 police departments in this country. That's why we have federal law enforcement agents. The United States military is not allowed to do the job of domestic law enforcement, and so Donald Trump will waste $50 million, $100 million to send a group of unarmed U.S. soldiers to the southern border to do nothing because they are legally prevented from doing anything. If Donald Trump follows through on this political stunt, it would be a group of soldiers smaller than half, way less than half, of the Chicago Police Department. And the territory that they are supposed to cover is a lot bigger than Chicago, over 2,000 miles of terrain that is very difficult to patrol, and they won't be allowed to use their weapons in any way for any purpose. They won't be allowed to do anything if they are sent to the southern border for that stunt. Donald Trump is hoping that stunt will feel like winning for Trump voters, because Trump voters know they certainly aren't winning the wall that Donald Trump promised them. Trump voters know they didn't win the money to build the wall from Mexico. He promised them Mexico would pay for the wall. He led them in chance that Mexico would pay for the wall, and Mexico's not paying a penny. And that sure doesn't feel like winning. And Donald Trump has not gotten a penny out of a Republican-controlled Congress to build 1 foot of the new Trump wall, not 1 foot of Trump wall, and that doesn't feel like winning for Trump voters. And so there's not a word at Trump rallies now about Mexico paying for the wall. Those people in the red hats are not tired of winning, and so Donald Trump has to keep them scared. And if that means we see the words and ideas of Donald Trump in another mass murderer's final social media posting before going in for the kill, then that's the price Donald Trump seems willing to pay for keeping his voters scared. Have we now seen America's last mass murderer to use Donald Trump's language and ideas in his final social media posting before he kills, as the mass murderer in Pittsburgh did? We don't know. But we do know tonight that no matter how scared Donald Trump gets his sane supporters, most of his supporters, no matter how scared he gets them to feel tonight, none of them, not one of them, are as scared as Donald Trump, who is running scared. More scared than he has ever been in his life. Joining our discussion now, Stuart Stevens, Republican political consultant. He served as the chief strategist for Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign. And Jason Johnson, the politics editor at TheRoot.com and an MSNBC contributor. And Jason, what I'm seeing is that the Trump voters have no reason to feel tired of winning. And so Donald Trump wants to give them that other feeling, which is scared, which is terror, which is fear of what's happening out there. That's what he believes he activated them with in the beginning of his presidential campaign, and that's what he needs them to feel now.
Right. And if you're running for president of the United States, making people afraid works perfectly fine. But if you're trying to galvanize people at the state-by-state level, it doesn't work that well. I don't know if when the president shows up in Cleveland next week and he tries to tell them that there's a horrible caravan of barefoot women and children seeking asylum in the United States, if that's necessarily going to help Mike DeWine. I don't know if when he goes down to Florida and pulls that same line, if that's going to help Ron DeSantis. I mean, the problem is the president of the United States only has one beat. He's a one-trick pony. He's the guy who knows one chord on the guitar, and that's all he knows. And if you can't frighten people into voting for you, you have to actually offer something. And a president who is obsessed with his own ego and his own power and his own future never has anything to offer because he's empty on the inside. And I predict this right now, Lawrence, the moment after the midterms end, if the Democrats end up taking the House, in classic Donald Trump phraseology, he will come out and say, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but the president usually does lose seats in his first midterm election. He will completely blame everybody else in history rather than take responsibility for the fact that he couldn't frighten the American public into keeping his party in power.
Stuart, it seems like everything we're hearing from Donald Trump about troops and birthright citizenship, all of these are all just stunts. They're obvious stunts, and they are stunts being played in the last week of an election campaign, and I can't see any other reason for them other than Donald Trump can't think of anything else to say.
Well, I think that's true. The Donald Trump of 2016 was just a gateway drug to the Donald Trump of 2018. Nothing has changed. I mean, you and Jason are both right. You know, as someone who has worked in Republican campaigns, it's incredibly depressing because at the end, yes, campaigns get negative, they get nasty, and yes, you know, we can all admit honestly that there's some element to every campaign that is scaring the other side about the possibility. But there has to be some unifying theme that uplifts people, that makes people want to vote other than fear. Or it is just incredibly a race to the bottom. And I think it's a very good point that was made about how is this going to help governors and these statewide offices out there that are just so important. They need somebody out there who is presenting a big picture that they can point to and say, we want to be like that. And I think there's just a limited utility to trying to make everybody afraid of some folks walking around Mexico.
And Stuart, as someone who's worked on Republican campaigns, when you see this kind of campaigning by the president at this stage of the campaign, does that tell you that that the Republicans and the White House are reading this as a likely win for Democrats, and so that's why we're seeing the style of campaigning we're seeing?
Well, guessing what the White House is thinking is probably always a loser's game. But,
thinking's a big word for what goes on in there, I guess. Yeah.
You know, I just go back to Mark Cuban's line. What was it? That Donald Trump is the guy at the bar at closing time that'll say anything. And I think that's what we're seeing here. It almost literally is just throwing stuff up against the wall to see what sticks. I mean, to pull birthright citizenship out, it's just really extraordinary. And to end up, here you are, what, right before the election, and you're in a fight with the Speaker of the House. That's just not any kind of unified, positive message that people can look to and feel good about the party.
Yeah, Jason, when's the last time we saw a president trying to get his party reelected to control the House of Representatives, and his party's Speaker of the House of Representatives has to, in the final week of the campaign, publicly, sharply disagree with the president on a huge issue like birthright citizenship, and then the president fights back, spends a 24-hour news cycle in a fight with the Republican speaker whose members he's supposed to be trying to reelect.
Especially in a state where the Republican governor, Scott Walker, is in a tight race, and the president's there, you know, insulting people like Paul Ryan. I mean, and there's another element to this. You know, Paul Ryan, because he knows he's retiring, he's not going to be held responsible for this. He is the freest man in Washington, D.C. right now. He's pouring wine for himself because he knows he's basically out of a job soon. He doesn't want to do this. But what it reflects is that this president has never been, he has always been overrated as a galvanizer. He is a great galvanizer of voters for him. He is not able to sprinkle that magic on anybody else. I was just speaking to one of my colleagues in Cleveland. You know, Trump has sort of bogarted his way into giving a rally in Cleveland next week. Republicans there are terrified because they think if he shows up in Cleveland, it's going to galvanize the urban voters to be reminded, oh my gosh, there's a white nationalist here. I should probably get to the polls. The president he's not just a bull in a china shop. He's got muddy shoes on your couch everywhere he goes. And for some reason, he thinks he's redesigning the room. And that's what Republicans are going to have to face, because if they lose big next week, it is because of this president, not what they're doing at the local level.
Stuart Stevens, quickly before we get in a break here, one of the strategic uses of a president is you use the president where he can help you, and you don't send him anywhere where he can hurt you. That doesn't seem to have been mastered by Trump world.
No, I think Donald Trump goes where he thinks he can get a crowd and he'll enjoy it.
Right.
I don't think it has any part of a larger strategy. This is about Donald Trump.
Stuart Stevens, Jason Johnson, thank you very much for starting us off tonight.